back.
All right.
And good morning.
Be super awkward if you couldn't.
Yeah, no doubt. It's it's cold enough outside that I'm shamelessly wearing my Jedi robes this morning.
There's no shame in wearing Jedi robes.
No, there's not.
Well, okay. Before the sequel trilogy, there was no shame in wearing Jedi robes.
I choose to ignore that heresy.
Yes.
The trilogy itself, not your statement about it. The sequel trilogy was pure heresy.
Started off fairly strong, and then The Last Jedi just came along. Every time I watch that one, I'm like, yeah, but I'm on Poe's side.
Steve says it's going to be almost 60 today. Yeah, I saw that. It'll be interesting.
But it's not
But it's
almost
not there
60
yet.
now. It are still officially below freezing. And good morning, Danielle.
Good morning, Danny.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So it's Wednesday. It's WTF CNN. Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about how we haven't been doing the WTF CNN as regularly as we used to, and
turns out nobody else has either.
Exactly. Amusingly, CNN has lost what was it, 90% of their viewership?
Something like 90% of their viewership.
Plunged. And it's pretty clear that what's happening here is they've been caught out as just vociferous liars.
Yeah, Donald Trump saved their network, and now that he's gone.
Yeah, if Trump had not won in 2016, there might not be a CNN today, because they were already sucking hind tit when the Donald took office, and they became the we hate Orange Man network.
It probably doesn't help that there's multiple members of their organization now that have been fired for some really creepy sexual stuff.
And if you've got one bad actor at your organization, that's one thing. They have a real problem.
Well, yeah, you've got the producer, I forget his name, Chris Cuomo, who, to be fair, might not have done a bunch of creepy sexual stuff, but helped his brother cover up creepy sexual stuff. So, apples, oranges.
Have you seen that Cuomo is not being charged now? The charges are disappearing?
Yeah, which I find interesting, but that's its own...
Yeah, it's its own kettle
discussion.
Of fish.
And then you've got, of course, Don Lemon, who...
And wow, if you don't know the story of his indiscretions, it's...
I'm not interested in repeating that
story. We're not going to get into it right now, but just...
But it probably, nonetheless...
And let's not forget Tubin.
Yeah.
I mean...
Oh, my. Oh my! Yeah, that was.
It's like the CNN job application has a background check that explicitly filters for sexual perversion.
Yeah. So.
I mean, seriously.
Not only did they suck.
Ask yourself this: have you ever felt the need to just rub one out in the middle of a Zoom call, in the middle of a professional meeting? Like, I mean. Anyway.
I mean, that depends. Like, you could work with Stormy Daniels, for example, and it could just be expected.
Yeah, that's a very different industry. Very different industry. So anyway.
So yeah, CNN sucks, and then they hired a bunch of perverts, and for some strange reason, their ratings have cratered.
And
harder than the meteor that killed the dinosaur.
Most of those perverts have been there for years. Most of them were already there before the Donald got elected. And I mean, it's not like these were new hires and it's like, oh well, you know, we were desperate for people because it's a difficult job market right now and nobody's looking for work. Nobody needs a job right now. Anyway, so
I'm sure Brian Stelter and his donuts are fine though.
Wow. Yeah, he does look like he
enjoys a donut, Chris.
Like I'm a heavy guy. I'm a big dude. Yeah. And I on occasion enjoy a disgusting little fat pill. But they're not my entire diet. So, the president,
the former vice president,
Robinette Biden, who totally won the freest and fairest election ever. I need to put some canned laughter on the stream deck. Is finally doing a press conference today, and okay,
and I'm sure this won't be awkward at all.
No.
I'm positive he won't have scripted questions that, in fact, I'm absolutely 100% positive that he won't do fine for about 30 to 45 minutes before whatever they shoot him up with starts to wear off.
Right.
And he wanders off script.
Before he runs out of drugs like, you know, a Democrat.
Like George Floyd? Oh, he didn't run out of drugs. He had too many.
No, he did not.
He might have done better if he ran out of drugs.
So CNN says there are 10 crises that demand answers at Biden's press conference today. And, guys, I hope you're ready for this take. Because this is a take. Analysis by Stephen Collinson. And they call this analysis. I'm going to analyze your analysis, Collinson.
It's analysis.
It's CNN, it is. So if President Joe Biden's only task in his solo press conference on Wednesday was restoring his battered political standing, it would be daunting enough, but the president will arrive at the East Room at a moment of national exhaustion and drained morale as the coronavirus pandemic heads into a third year, amid a sense that events at home and abroad are cascading out of control and that vicious ideological divides could tear America apart. The country has not been as ideologically estranged for generations. Two big blocks of Americans believe everything that they think their nation stands for could be ripped away. Before I get into the rest of this awful take,
two big blocks of Americans.
The country has not been as estranged for generations, he says. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that?
Oh, they're proud of it. They know it's their fault and they're proud of it.
It's by design. You know, parents at a parent teacher conference are white supremacist terrorists. The white supremacists, you know, both of them are the greatest threat to national terror.
Yeah,
and don't pay attention to those Jews in the synagogue. That wasn't terror because
that was a British
he's
citizen.
Not a white guy. He's a British citizen.
His name was Malik.
Now, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. He's not a white guy.
Malik.
He's a British citizen. It sounds to me like when you just said British citizen, you were really trying to convince me that he was a white guy. Because
Well, one of the things that was the most illustrative about the whole white supremacist narrative is like the whole rally at Charlottesville thing, and like literally there were 300 or 400 people there. Yeah, I would agree with those numbers. I'd say that's actually really representative of the kind of support that white supremacy gets in this country. Even if you say, okay, but only 10% of the white supremacists showed up because the other 90% were too afraid to.
Right.
Okay, we're talking about.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Now let's look at the black supremacist rallies.
Well, and then at that point, we're talking about 3,000 out of a country of 300 million. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That's your, like, less than 1% of 1% type of numbers.
It's certainly not 3%. Oh.
You mean like people that would get killed by the virus?
Oh,
my.
Glow, I'm not going to repeat those out loud.
And I also feel like we're going to be careful even saying that one's name, but that's a fantastic Twitch comment.
Yeah.
Well, you get the spicy ones from Twitch.
Bring it on, Glow. Bring it on. But, oh, damn it. Now you've distracted
Two big
me.
blocks of Americans, white supremacists, Malik, the synagogue.
And like I was saying, like I was about to say, you look at the black supremacist rallies, and unlike Charlottesville, they're burning down buildings and literally murdering people in the street. Dozens of
20 years
people
ago, you
just
had that
straight
Million Man
murdered in the
March.
street.
That only had about 500,000 people show up, but they
Right.
still called it a Million Man March.
And that was a different creature. I would not go so far as to say that was a black supremacist rally.
I would. That was Louis Farrakhan.
Big contextual difference. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call Chauvin a hero, Glow, but he certainly wasn't guilty of murder. Now Kyle is what everyone's children should strive to be. What a solid kid. So
Kyle is who you hope your daughter marries.
Okay, so the country's not been. I already read that. Biden was elected. This paragraph right here,
Just amazing.
So unlike a Firearms Friday, I do read these articles in advance most of the time. I just it's hard to get through a cup of coffee sometimes without burning out my nose hairs. Biden was elected to slake the poison, bridge divides, and solve problems. Was he?
To slake the poison.
To slake the poison, bridge divides, and solve problems. But in his first year in office, political bitterness has deepened. Partly because of ex-President Donald Trump's corrosive and dangerous campaign to destroy American democracy.
How? He's been kicked off of everything.
And Biden's interpretation of tiny Democratic mandates in Congress might have delighted liberals, but it has prompted some who saw him as a moderate to wonder whether they misjudged him. If you mistook Joe Biden for a moderate up front, it is not that you misjudged Biden. It is that you have lost touch with reality. It is that you don't understand you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Well, Biden's not an extremist either. Biden was an opportunist. He has for some time now gone whichever way the political wind has blown.
Correct.
So to say that he's a moderate or an extremist is not, neither's correct.
He's an empty suit.
That's right.
Biden is a figurehead for whatever the Democrat National Committee views to be their primary constituency.
That's part of why he was able to work for Barack Obama. He was okay with following one of them well-dressed ones that was clean cut.
That you don't see very often.
They're
articulate.
They're very, unless you like bust your kids into the jungle areas of the city.
Oh yeah, I can say this for Biden. He is an absolute wealth of amusing quotes.
Yeah, I mean, even before he started to get the dementia thing happening, he was like, you can't go into a 7-Eleven unless you have a slight Indian accent.
Right.
Like.
So I'm gonna skip the rest of this because it's not especially important. This article purports to list 10 things. Will Biden's big COVID-19 testing push work? Okay. I want to point out real quick. I'm going to scroll back up here real quick and point out this was updated at 12:05 this morning. Right.
So this, about 8 hours
This
ago.
was updated about 8 hours ago, and he's asking the question, will Biden's big COVID-19 testing push work? No. It's that simple. No. Okay, so the best you can hope for with testing is that people become aware that they're sick with a thing. Guys, it's not hard. If you're sick, I don't care if it's COVID-19.
Take the day off.
Not hard.
Stay home, drink hot tea, maybe some hot soup, lay under the blankets, take some ibuprofen, and don't go to the office and get everybody else sick.
And wash your nasty ass.
Yeah. Maybe take a shower and wash your hands, okay?
Right? I mean, frankly, because we know, like we can say this on the air now. We can say this now because the talking heads are already saying it. Omicron is significantly less substantial and accounts for the majority of COVID cases currently.
Yeah, it appears to be more transmissible but less lethal.
Which is basically the pattern with every viral mutation. And I don't mean every mutation of COVID. I mean every virus that mutates over time becomes more transmissible and less deadly, almost without exception. So it's offering every American family 4 rapid COVID-19 tests.
Thomas Waller says, just because I'm an adult doesn't mean I can't sip Sprite, snuggle under a blanket, and watch The Price is Right.
Damn right.
For a certain segment of the population, that was staying home sick from school, wasn't it?
Yep.
Like, The Price is Right.
And Campbell's chicken soup.
No, my parents were the ones that would give me, like, Coke or Sprite. As long as I was drinking something,
Yep.
they were good with it.
Yep.
Oh, my. Okay.
So
the tests aren't going to work.
The testing is, I mean, what's it
It's
supposed to do?
already not worked. That's the point.
Correct.
Like, it's sort of like that thing. So, like, wait a minute. So, vaccines and masks get rid of the virus. Why do we still have the virus? It's just a question, YouTube. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just asking a question.
And here's the next one. Where does Biden draw the risk equation between mitigation and normal life? He doesn't. We don't even need to read this. It's this simple. With or without the virus, if suddenly there were no COVID-19, if it suddenly ceased to exist, the lockdowns, this is something that Democrats have wanted for a long time. Not minimally because their large corporate donors are making a fortune off of watching the mom and pop shops be shut down.
Yeah, there's a reason why big corporations are okay with government mandates. They can afford to comply with them, and typically their businesses cannot. Chris and I have talked about this a lot, where people say, oh, capitalism is evil because it leads to a monopoly. And so, no, you can't have the monopoly without the assistance of a government body.
Correct.
Otherwise, competition is inevitable. It might be difficult, it might take time, and it could be a very small group of people that can afford to have the competition. But competition is inevitable. But as soon as you get the government involved, and the government's the one that's allowed to point guns at people pretty much unilaterally.
Now, in fairness, if there were no government, we had a total anarcho-capitalist system, then it's possible that you could have a monopoly in that system if a large enough company were to decide to use guns to enforce the existence of a monopoly. And if that were to occur, you would have developed a new thing, which is called a government. So, does Biden understand fears over inflation are not transitory? I think this is hilarious. Does he understand that fears over inflation are not transitory? Yeah, Dad, Sergeant Major says, now testing.
Glow, Glow.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Glow, dude.
I'm gonna have to dump you now. You're running the risk of costing us the stream, getting into that kind of stuff. Okay, so Dad points out, now testing is a new way to buy votes. Last week, COVID home tests were hard to find, even if you wanted to pay $20 for it. Now, so that brings up a couple of things. One, there are a bunch of COVID tests just laying out on the train tracks right now in California. You tracking on this?
No.
Yeah. California has recently experienced a 160% increase in, I shit you not, train robberies. Yep. So you know the big train and they've got the containers on the trains.
Yeah.
People are going and climbing up on the containers and opening them up, and just digging through. Waller says Chicago train robberies. Maybe I'm thinking of Chicago. But they're cracking open the containers and just going through and taking what they want. And one of the things, notably, amusingly, that they're not taking, when they rip open an Amazon package in one of these containers and it's full of rapid tests, yeah, those are just getting thrown off on the ground. The footage from it.
No. CNN. We're running out of time.
But there's just trash everywhere. It's hilarious.
Well, but the thing about inflation, it's not paradoxical. Like, shit is more expensive. We were talking about this earlier this week, where, like, Little Caesars has had to raise their price. And your mom pointed out in the comment that Dollar Tree is now $1.25 instead of $1. Like, Dollar Tree has been $1 my whole life.
Right.
That's the point of the Dollar Tree. You buy 10 things, you pay $10.
Oh, like the $5 hot and ready isn't $5 anymore, like we talked about yesterday.
555. It's like,
yeah. It's a pity Herman Cain's not around to run that campaign.
Worst hike in inflation since 1982. That's interesting. It's almost like we printed a bunch of money, shut down domestic energy supply, and had wild swings in our employment rate. Wait, no, it's exactly what happened.
and now we've got the question, how are the U.S. and Russia suddenly back in a Cold War style
Oh, that's
showdown?
easy. Joe Biden still thinks it's 1998 or whatever.
Well, Joe Biden's the president. That is the thing. The next question, how will Biden contain, and I'm kind of glossing over this one to get to this one and kind of deal with them together. How will Joe Biden contain the nuclear threat from North Korea and Iran? These are the same issue, guys.
Mimic Trump?
We had a strong president who was willing to use the weapons of war and the talents of diplomacy to negotiate and work with these bad actors. You know, as much as I would love to just wipe out the leadership and government in China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and, you know, magically, boom, you've got a U.S. Constitution-style government, and you've got free people who are prosperous because they're free to earn and create wealth. It's not in the cards. Our government our elected officials do not have the stomach to do what it would take to achieve that, which is actual war. So quite simply, Russia and North Korea and Iran, we've actually got two problems here. They know that Joe Biden is weak and will not take actions against him. And quite simply, he's corrupt. He's deeply corrupt. And that's not speculation. We have significant evidence on that.
You mean like a laptop that Twitter wouldn't let us talk about?
Right, not least of which is the laptop. So, I mean, Joe Biden, this is something that we knew we were getting with Joe Biden. This is something that we said would be a result if Joe Biden was elected, is that, you know, it'll be just like Obama. The rest of the world will see a weak and feckless U.S. leader, and they will attempt to take advantage of that. Can Biden build back
We're
better?
just going to skip over the voting rights thing?
Jim
Eagle.
Jim Eagle.
It's Jim Eagle.
I guess he thought he was being clever. I hope nobody wrote that for him.
Is it really worse if somebody did write it for him and he no longer possesses enough political acumen to see that on the page and go, nope, fuck that, we're moving right on? Oh, I did it, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Almost a whole stream. I don't like the new rule. I'm not saying I just want to F-bomb all over the place, but I don't like the new rule. We're already not monetized. Who cares?
Well, I would not mind getting there.
Fair enough. So what's next for voting rights? We already have voting rights out the wazoo, okay? And it turns out, and we've talked about this before, how a lot of the opposition to, say, Georgia's voting law is based around a technicality that there are some counties, some local municipalities that are actually going to see a decrease in opportunities to vote. Like there are precincts in Fulton County and Cobb County, for example, that were already open 7 days a week, something ridiculous like 12, 14 hours a day. And according to the new voting law, they have to target certain dates. But look, let me be really clear about something.
Plus, we just had a judge in...
But you've already got 4 weeks notice to vote early.
Yeah.
And y'all, I don't mind admitting that screw your early voting. Oh, but I might have to go wait in line for 2 hours to vote. Look, if waiting in line for 2 hours, if waiting in line for 4 hours, if any of that is a barrier to you voting, then don't vote. And no.
Because it doesn't matter to you.
It doesn't. And look, a whole bunch of guys like me that have my stance are more than willing to make reasonable accommodations. Like if you're 80-year-old grandma and you're on a walker, fine, you can go to the front of the line, okay? I'm not a monster, and most people like me are not. But if you're like me and you're 40 years old and you're in relatively good health, go wait in line. Oh, well, I might get thirsty. Bring water. And I'll just point out, okay, I have lived in areas that were controlled by Republicans, and I have lived in areas that were controlled by Democrats. And the areas that are controlled by Republicans, it's never taken me more than 30 minutes to get through the polling precinct. Ever. Ever.
Oh, that's largely because we don't bus people in from out of the district.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about the corruption. I was just talking about the ability to...
Oh, yeah, to do a thing.
To do a thing.
To do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, they can do lots of things, but they're used to the bureaucracy where you can just, wait. Instead of running a business where sometimes you just have to make a decision on the spot, and maybe that's maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you have to roll with it. So, but the whole thing with voting rights, restricting the voting rights, I'll even say something somewhat controversial. If passing a bill that clarifies things like drop boxes and voting schedules, because that's really all the Georgia bill did. In fact, guys like Chris and I don't think the bill went far enough because it actually legally allows for things like drop boxes.
Which is a travesty.
Which is a stupid idea because you can't check an ID or even do a proper signature match at a drop box because, it just is what it is, okay? So, if that targets a certain demographic and makes it more difficult for them to vote, and that very same demographic happens to have more overlap with one political party as opposed to another, the problem is not guys like Chris and I. The problem is not the law itself. The problem is the generations, the years, the decades, the whatever that you have spent cultivating a voting base that is just smart enough to check the D on the ballot box and apparently not smart enough to do much else. And it's not me that has the bigotry of low expectations. I don't. I have high expectations. I believe you're capable.
It was Stacey Abrams that said that black people were too stupid to write their name on a voter registration form.
WTF, CNN.
And
do they have the?
You mentioned drop boxes. A Wisconsin judge just earlier this week, I think, or into last week, has determined that he's ruled that the drop boxes are illegal. That there's no authority to create them. That if Even if there were an authority to create them, that authority would rest with the legislature. And the example he used, he said the language in these rules is so broad that it could be a shoebox on a park bench. There's no security requirement, nothing, no integrity to it. And that was the example that the judge used. The drop box could just be a shoebox on a park bench. And that's a big piece of why he ruled that they were illegal. Now, that's Wisconsin. That's not Georgia. But that was a lot of the complaints about 2020 were that rules were changed, and they were changed unlawfully because they were changed without the legislature making those changes. And if we get yeeted for that statement, I mean that statement is uncontrovertible.
Well, no, we're not saying there was any fraud in the election. It was the most free and secure and awesome case of election ever. Joe Biden is like king of the emperor god universe.
Most popular president ever, with 30% of the electorate in support. Okay, guys, that is the show for today. I'm gonna have to go ahead and wrap it up. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.